Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of my vlog. Today I'm going to try to explain the difference between Standard English, Singaporean English and Singlish. Now this is going to be a difficult task anyway and it's bound to be a contentious issue. My aim is to get my viewers thinking about the issue and stimulate a debate on the matter. Now let's begin with some definitions. Standard English is English as it is meant to be spoken. Many Singaporeans do not speak Standard English because having a Singaporean accent often means mispronouncing many words in English. And perhaps it is because I'm a Mandarin speaker as well, so I'm actually very particular about how some words are pronounced. We use the Hanyu pinyin system, which tells us precisely and exactly how each character has to be pronounced. No ifs, no buts, no excuses whatsoever. Maybe someone with a strong regional accent would mispronounce a certain word, but make no mistake, it is not someone simply having an accent. And in English, guess what? We also have a set of phonetics which tells you exactly how each word is meant to be pronounced. So you don't have the right to say, I'm gonna pronounce it like this because I want to. No, you don't. You can't do that. So actually there are variations amongst Standard English speakers from the UK, the US, Canada, Australia and New Zealand, and this mostly boils down to the regional accent of the speaker, but as long as they do generally conform to the standard rules of pronunciation, then it can be considered Standard English. Singaporean English is a bit harder to define, mostly because Singaporeans are under the impression that they are speaking Standard English as long as they are not speaking Singlish. Well, that's a sensitive issue. Singaporean English is defined by a certain set of common mistakes made by Singaporeans, such as the inability to pronounce the TH digraph. Let's take the phrase, without these three healthy teeth. A Singaporean would say it as, without these three healthy teeth. Singaporeans often place the stress on the wrong syllable. Now take words like helicopter and primary. In Standard English, one would place the stress on the first syllable, but Singaporeans tend to say helicopter and primary. There is also this bad habit to truncate words, not pronouncing the last syllable, thus turning words like basket into basket. Singaporeans also use certain words in a way that is simply not done in the West. For example, they often use the word stay when they mean live. There's a big difference between the two. You stay somewhere for a short period of time, but you live somewhere for a much longer period. So for example, John stayed at a nice hotel when he visited London last weekend. My sister lives in Singapore. Singaporeans call this a handphone, whereas in the UK, the preferred term is a mobile phone, whereas in the US, they tend to say a cell phone. Now many Singaporeans grew up watching a lot of American television, so they have no problems understanding American English, but the reverse simply isn't true. To most foreigners who have never ever encountered Singaporean English before, it is often a big shock to the system and very hard to understand. Of course, the stronger the accent, the further it drifts from Standard English. As for Singlish, well, we know exactly what it is. It is a lot easier to define. It is a Singaporean Creole encompassing loanwords from Malay, Chinese, and other Asian languages, and the grammar is often borrowed from Chinese or Malay, and that makes it quite hard for foreigners outside Singapore to understand. Now, many Singaporeans may think, well, I don't speak Singlish, I speak English, and that's when I have to say, yeah, you speak Singaporean English, which is a form of English, I grant you that, but it's not exactly Standard English. Now, is Singaporean English simply bad English? That is debatable, but I would say no, it isn't. It makes complete sense in Singapore. If the majority of people in the country or a community speaks the same way, make the same mistakes, then those mistakes feel totally normal. And over time, this is a cycle which perpetuates itself as more and more people learn to speak the same way in order to fit in. Just to give you an idea of how different Singaporean English sounds from Standard English, I am going to read you the following paragraph, first in Standard English and then in Singaporean English. Now the words are exactly the same. It is only my accent and pronunciation that will change. Yuna is the first Malaysian artist to win over the American market. She divides her time between her native Malaysia and Los Angeles, having been signed up by indie pop records in 2011. Yuna was exposed to different musical genres at a very young age thanks to her parents' love of music. She started writing when she was 14 and performed her songs in public at the age of 19. And now in Singaporean English. Yuna is the first Malaysian artist to win over the American market. She divides her time between her native Malaysia and Los Angeles, having been signed up by indie pop records in 2011. Yuna was exposed to different musical genres at a very young age thanks to her parents' love of music. She started writing when she was 14 and performed her songs in public at the age of 19. So you've heard both versions, and I want to ask you, what is the difference between the two? Now, I guess for me, the key difference between the two is purely in the context. If I spoke Singaporean English like that in London, then people are going to think, boy, that foreign guy has a really strong accent. But if I spoke like that in Singapore, then it would be perceived to be utterly, totally normal. Allow me to state the obvious. There is in fact a sliding scale from Standard English on one end of the scale, Singaporean English in the middle, and Singlish on the opposite end. And the closer you are to Standard English on this scale, the more easily understood you will be around the world. Most Singaporeans are somewhere in between the two extremes on the scale. Now, admittedly, perhaps I'm not the best person to judge this. After all, whenever I'm back in Singapore, most people take one look at me and simply assume that I am a local and do not bother to code switch for me. So they simply speak to me in Singaporean English or Singlish and assume that I'll understand them perfectly. And I do. But if a white person were to show up, then perhaps they would speak to that white person quite differently. So that's it for me on this issue. Feel free to let me know what you think about it. Is there a grand difference between Standard English and Singaporean English in your opinion? Should Singaporeans try to speak Standard English, or is Singaporean English perfectly acceptable, at least within the context of Singapore? Feel free to let me know what you think. Do leave a comment below, and thank you very much for watching.